Hello everyone, welcome to Onichan. Today, I will introduce the martial arts anime, Baki, where notorious inmates are trying to escape and make their way to Tokyo. They challenge the top Japanese martial artists, as they've never experienced the feeling of defeat. To secure victory, they employ any means necessary, causing the top martial artists great concern, as these are individuals unafraid of death. Can they overcome these arrogant challengers or not? After Baki won the Japanese heavyweight championship belt at just 17 years old, he continued to lead the life of an ordinary student, carrying books and pens to school. Of course, every school has its own group of bullies, and when they heard that Baki had transferred without acknowledging their presence, they decided to teach him a lesson in respect. However, when they looked at Baki's tough expression, the three bullies hesitated, as they were still recovering from their evening of drinking chicken feet and lime leaves. Seeing this, Baki quietly returned to his classroom. As none of the bullies dared to face him, Old Man Toku paid a visit to Baki's school, to inform him about the escape of 5 notorious criminals, who were headed to Tokyo to find the strongest fighters. The first among them was the convict Dorian. On the day of his scheduled execution, Dorian complied with the law, thinking everything would go smoothly, but unexpectedly, he rose up and eliminated all the prison guards, creating chaos within the prison due to his sinister actions. In a different prison facility, the inmate Doyle was seated in an electric chair, and the prison warden had decided to execute him with a jolt of 100,000 volts, believing him to be dead after the shocking experience. However, to everyone's surprise, Doyle sprang to life and swiftly took down all the guards present. In another location, a high-security missile prison in Russia, the inmate Sakor managed to scale a 100-meter metal wall without leaving any trace, despite the military's efforts to stop him. Next came a highly dangerous inmate named Speck, who was locked in a cell. When the prison warden went to visit him, he was shocked to find the cell empty, and his pants almost fell down in astonishment. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the inmate Yanagi was calmly practicing calligraphy. As a master of poisons, he was isolated with a special glass barrier. 2 prison guards clenched their buttocks nervously when he approached, and Yanagi demonstrated a bit of his unique talent to impress them. However, fate took a turn when his clumsy teammate accidentally shattered the glass barrier, so they were knocked down on the spot. Even though these 5 inmates have no direct connection, they share a common goal: to find the strongest opponent and experience the sensation of defeat. As the imminent danger approaches, the group of tough guys at the school once again calls upon their senior member for help in defeating Baki. After impressive displays of skill, they come to an agreement. A hefty member of the group extends an invitation to Baki for a friendly meetup at the park, which Baki finds intriguing and accepts. At the park, the 2 groups engage in a friendly exchange. A member wielding a knife charges forward, but he senses the danger and stops in his tracks. Another member, using a rope with a bell, launches an attack. He skillfully twirls it through the air, but his movements are slow compared to Baki's speed. A professional knife wielder charges forward but loses his knife, leaving the group visibly unnerved. Speck was the first to find Baki and displayed his madness. He was eager to engage with Baki, and the handshake was just a charming touch before the main act. Then an unexpectedly painful kick. He forcefully pinned Baki to the ground and proceeded with a series of stomps, seemingly intent on ending the young man's life. Fortunately, the police arrived on the scene just in time. Speck explained that today was merely a greeting, and expressed hope for an official showdown with Baki, but not forgetting to add a parting kick to his face. The police force was urgently planning to apprehend these dangerous individuals. While the police captain went to the toilet and saw a waterfall next to him, it turned out that the criminal Speck was casually urinating there. Not only that, Speck even bought a bun to offer to the captain. This seemingly kind gesture took an unexpected turn when the captain dared to kick Speck. In response, Speck shoved the entire bun into the captain's mouth. Inside the martial arts training room, Retsu was exchanging martial techniques with Katsumi. The 2 participate in a beautifully choreographed match, executing skillful flying kicks and moves that left their disciples in awe. They discussed the importance of preserving the cultural heritage of martial arts. The elderly Dorian entered seeking Doppo for a challenge. However, Katsumi insisted that Dorian take off his shoes before engaging. Dorian didn't hesitate to comply. Throwing his shoes instantly, he lunged forward with a kick. Despite not wanting to go that far, he found the young man quite insolent, so he decided to give him a lesson. The young man countered the attack, quickly throw a knee kick in Dorian's face. However, Dorian quickly finished with a decisive blow, and was no longer interested in the match, so he turned away. But Retsu doesn't let this go easily. Dorian feeling intimidated and cried as if it were raining, and then he resorted to dirty tricks, forcing Retsu to spin around several times before landing a kick on him. Dorian, not wanting any more trouble, So he drank some alcohol and employed a fiery magic trick to escape. Retsu was extremely angry when this old man dared to break the sanctity of the dojo. Old man Toku was in the process of recruiting fighters for his tournament. The arrogance displayed by a new fighter prompted Sakura to inquire about his health. The game began when the young brat was suddenly beaten down. Sakura wants to warn old man Toku, as he hadn't been invited to the arena. The medical team loaded the beaten young fighter onto the vehicle, but Igari got a little annoyed and punched Sakura right away. However, his punch hit a rock. Sakura felt that he wanted to get on the medical vehicle, so he attacked and created a few more scars on his face. Old man Toku was speechless at what he saw. He led the young fighter to his arena, but to his surprise, the other 4 remaining inmates had also gathered there. The 5 of them wanted Toku to find the strongest opponents in Japan for them to challenge. The situation became even more astonishing when the other top martial artists appeared as well. Together, they discussed the rules of a 5-on-5 match. But this time, there was no requirement to fight within the arena. They could battle anywhere they pleased, and every place they stood would be a battlefield. It was a simple and straightforward rule. If you collide, you fight. Location and circumstances didn't matter. After explaining the rules, everyone went their separate ways. Old man Doppo was highly intrigued by the presence of Dorian, especially after the incident where Dorian disrupted his martial arts dojo. Doppo swiftly threw the backpack at Dorian's face, and followed it up with a kick to the head. However, Dorian employed his fiery magic trick to burn Doppo. But luckily, Doppo had a secret technique to counter the flames. Dorian continued to use his tricks, causing Doppo to gently let go of his hand. Modern martial arts were not merely about physical strength. They also involved scientific knowledge and techniques. When combined, these elements could make opponents tremble in fear. Dorian also praised Doppo, acknowledging that despite his dropped hand, he had utilized internal energy to stop the bleeding in his arm, and that very arm could deliver a powerful punch to old man Dorian's face, and then they disappeared from the scene. Meanwhile, Baki successfully charmed the landlord's daughter, and they had planned to take a leisurely stroll together. Suddenly, a group of hooligans attempted to extort money from them. Baki swiftly subdued and adjusted the attire of the leader, and instilling fear in the entire group. As the night fell, the 2 of them held each other's hands tightly. Baki expressed his sweet affection and delivered a tender kiss. However, as just when the kiss was about to deepen, Spec disrupted the scene. Fortunately, Baki's loyal companion intervened just in time. Yama and Spec found an empty space to engage in a martial arts exchange. Spec launched the initial attack. Yama didn't need words to demonstrate his strength, revealing generations-old tattoos, and Spec charged forward, delivering punches and a series of kicks, causing Yama was pushed against a lamppost. Spec even used a nearby bench to strike him. However, Yama was incredibly resilient, enduring the entire barrage of Spec's combo without falling. Spec found Yama's perseverance quite entertaining and decided to imitate him. He mocked Yama and launched a flurry of punches, delivering hundreds of hits. Yama remained silent, unable to defend himself in time. Spec backed Yama into a corner, increasing the speed of his strikes to the point where they became impossible to count. Yama capitalized on a brief and landed a powerful blow that left Spec momentarily staggered. Using his Kuan Yin style, Yama struck Spec, rendering him almost immobilized. But how can he die so quickly, when Yama has repeatedly hit the opponent hard? But Spec wasn't short on dirty tactics, swiftly shoved bullets into Yama's mouth, and the sky illuminated. Surprisingly, Yama was still alive. Despite his severe injuries, he persistently tried to punch Spec into the lamppost, then took Spec to the police station for authorities to deal with. The police chief expressed his gratitude to Yama, and ordered someone to take him home. The driver kept pressing the gas pedal, but the car refused to move. It turned out that Spec was holding onto the car and pushed it aside. Just as Yama poked his head out, he was met with a barrage of attacks. Despite his attempt to flee, Spec seized the opportunity to engage in a fight for survival. He employed whatever means necessary, regardless of how dirty they were. One shot landed in the opponent's mouth but failed. Yama quickly retaliated with a devastating punch that stunned the opponent. Spec unleashes a stun bomb, then turns the situation around, strangling him. Thinking he would die at Spec's hands, Yama unleashed a secret technique that left Spec screaming in agony. Spec poked his opponent's ear with his finger. Yama uses all his strength to squeeze and successfully knock down his opponent. Spec was taken to a hospital for recovery, but his body shriveled and aged, leaving him looking like an 80-year-old man. This phenomenon left doctors and scientists baffled, prompted further research. Meanwhile, as Baki was on his way home, when an elderly man suddenly launched a scythe at him, it turned out to be old man Yanagi seeking out. With a skillful scythe dance that scared Baki, Yanagi unleashed a barrage of life-threatening attacks. Sensing Baki's vulnerability, Yanagi throws him a scythe as a weapon. The intense battle continued, and despite his advanced age, Yanagi displayed remarkable agility, striking with lightning-fast attacks that forced Baki to dodge constantly. Luckily, Old Man Shibu intervened just in time, teasing Yanagi and infuriating him. Yanagi charged at Shibu, but Shibu swiftly countered and incapacitated him in an instant. Unable to bear the shame, Yanagi managed to land a hit on Shibu. When villains always possess formidable tricks, Baki and Shibu teamed up to take on Yanagi together. Their coordinated effort overwhelmed him, although Baki's lack of experience caused him to miss an opportunity to finish Yanagi. In the end, Yanagi had to resort to unleashing his deadly venomous technique. His words about the toxic substance mesmerized Baki. Yanagi approached and slapped Baki's face with his hand, a blow that sent Baki collapsing unconscious to the ground. Yanagi's toxin had depleted the oxygen in Baki's body, causing him to faint. Even Old Man Shibu was taken aback, as this was a situation he had never encountered before. Yanagi proceeded to demonstrate his unique toxin manipulation. He created a high-pressure compressed gas within his body, capable of destroying objects within a confined space. But the arrival of the police, Yanagi had to retreat from the scene, but still didn't forget to throw a kick at Baki to wake him up. Old Man Toku swiftly convened an emergency meeting with the five of them. When we're facing an uneven battle, the renowned fighters and champions were being attacked by nameless hooligans. Toku urged them to resort to cunning tactics to secure victory, recognizing that adhering to the rules of the arena would only lead to their demise at the hands of these unknown assailants. Yama, infuriated, grabbed Toku by the collar and contemplated delivering a punch, but considering Toku's frailty and the ephemeral nature of life, he decided to let it go. Dorian brought along a gasoline can as a gift for everyone, but unfortunately, Katsumi was also present. Swiftly grabbing a matchstick, Katsumi kicked the gasoline can toward Dorian, causing it to spill on him. He launched a series of strikes that sent Dorian tumbling to the ground. Katsumi asked if Dorian liked the idea of going up in flames with him, which left Dorian visibly terrified. It wasn't a mere jest, as Dorian soon found himself engulfed in flames, witnessed by the astonished onlookers. Retsu sensed that the old man wasn't accept defeat easily, so he launched an attack on him, true to expectations. Dorian still possessed considerable strength. Katsumi introduced a companion to join the fray. Katu wasted no time and went all out, subjecting Dorian to a brutal beating that left him screaming in agony, and Katu even tore off opponent's ear. However, Dorian seized the opportunity to use some threads to bind the two young fighters together, seemingly intending to kill them. Fortunately, Doppo intervened just in time to stop this dangerous ploy, warning Dorian not to engage in such tricks. As Dorian realized that there was no way out, he vomited a bomb, causing the room to light up in the darkest of nights. Dorian managed to escape to his secret hideout, where he could tend to his wounds. However, he was taken by surprise when Katu tracked him down and got here. Although Dorian wasn't particularly interested in fighting with this young brat, he felt compelled to engage due to the latter's audacity. Dorian smashed bottles of alcohol and applied adhesive to his knuckles, sticking shards of glass onto them, creating his signature glass punch. He challenged Katu to come. However, Katu was fearless and promptly threw a crate at Dorian. Try to attack the opponent. Dorian managed to dodge and counter, delivering painful blows to Katu. Recognizing vulnerability, Dorian stood his ground and defended against opponent attacks. Old Man Dorian skillfully delivered his cunning blows, accompanying them with melodious singing. He combined his strikes with a rhythm that left Katu reeling. Katu, realizing he needed a game-changing move, shattered the remaining bottles and rained down the shards on Dorian, aiming for opponent head. He then unleashed a relentless barrage of attacks, excited by the prospect of defeating Dorian, and demonstrating his own strength. However, Katu fell victim to Dorian's hypnotic trap. In Katu's dreamlike state, he felt his emotions soar as if he was achieving victory. Unfortunately, reality struck and Dorian seized the opportunity to deliver a decisive blow. The battle ended with a heartbreaking moment. At the martial arts dojo, while Retsu was practicing Qigong, he felt something was amiss when he punched the training bag. So, he decided to split the bag open, and discovered that Katu was near death. The Shinkai Martial Arts Dojo gathered its 500 members to discuss this matter, and informed all 5,000 members across the country to hunt down Dorian, to seek revenge for Katu. Swiftly, while Dorian was enjoying a meal at a restaurant, he was taken by the Shinkai Martial Arts members to a park. There, he was warmly welcomed by the entire 500 members to reciprocate their profound respect. As a gesture of gratitude, Dorian demonstrated the stark contrast in strength to the chauffeur. Upon entering, he met the park manager, who provided Dorian with an intense experience from his childhood, left him in ecstatic delight. But in the midst of his joyful enthusiasm, Pseudo kicked the old man's chair away. Afterwards, he rushed forward to attack relentlessly in order to avenge Katu. His surprise attack made Dorian realize that this opponent could not be underestimated. Thus, Dorian had to employ 72 techniques, resorting to the escape move as a last resort. However, Pseudo didn't realize that he was being led into a trap. He started to feel fear when the battle usually took place on the ground, and no one had ever created such difficult circumstances for combat. Dorian took advantage and rushed to strangle Pseudo. Seeing Pseudo's relative weakness, Dorian decided to taunt him a bit more. In a moment of realization, Pseudo recalled his master Dopo's teachings about balancing all things, then managed to successfully stand firm on the high-speed train. He felt a rush of exhilaration at his ability to reverse the situation, but Dorian grabbed him, causing both of them to be thrown off the train. If two people fall from above, who will die first? Of course, Pseudo suffered severe injuries. As Dorian had played a cunning trick, he had hooked a thread to a lamppost to reduce the impact of gravity upon hitting the ground. Katsumi, along with Retsu and Dopo, arrived at the scene. The three of them were determined not to let Dorian escape punishment for what he had done to their martial arts community. Katsumi challenged Dorian, but Dopo intervened, as he wanted to seek revenge for his injured hand. Dopo took off all his clothes, leaving only the legendary pants known as the Tiger Killer pants. He attacked Dorian with a series of powerful strikes to warm up his body. At the same time, he wanted to surprise everyone by revealing that his hand had been successfully reattached. Before that, Dopo sought out a familiar doctor, who helped him reattach his hand, despite the lack of proper medical equipment, but the surgical procedure was successful. Dorian decided to show off his muscles, but before he could react, Dopo lunged forward and delivered a series of incredibly powerful punches. The two engaged in an impressive and intense exchange. Dorian was astonished by the power of karate, but he claimed that he could do the same, and demonstrated a few moves as if mocking Dopo. Seizing the opportunity, Dorian tries to play dirty games, but Dopo remained unfazed, and continued to showcase his mastery of karate. When he saw old Dorian crying and begging, it made him very excited, but not knowing that he had been hit by Dorian's hypnosis, making Katsumi cry. However, the game ends when Dorian decides to end the game, but the clumsy old man accidentally bumped into his opponent's hand, causing Dopo to snap back to awareness. He unleashed a devastating hook followed by a series of finishing blows that incapacitated his opponent, regardless of Dorian's attempts to strike back. He employed a secret weapon kicked at Dopo, but that strike was intercepted, leaving Dorian in a state of shock and tears. Dopo demonstrated his mastery of karate, perform attacks that seem like his opponent will break into 100 pieces. A single leg hook made the old man face his own defeat, but Dopo reserved the finishing blow for Katu. Even though he was severely injured, Katu's fighting spirit compelled him to overcome his injuries and head towards Dorian. It seemed like the story would conclude in an extraordinary manner, but unexpectedly, Dorian feigned distress and cried uncontrollably, leading to the abrupt end of the confrontation. The doctor discovered a detonator in Dorian's hand, but unexpectedly, he later managed to find his way to Dopo's home. He launched a surprise attack with a deadly bomb, rendering Dopo unconscious. Dorian then gloated over his victory and sang songs of triumph. On his way back, he encountered Retsu again and attempted to fight back, but Retsu's punch left him unconscious. Then he was taken to the police station. The powerful blow had shaken his brain severely, leaving him mentally unstable, reduced to the mentality of a 2-year-old child just craving candy. Over here, Baki's girlfriend was lost in sweet memories, when suddenly Sakura sneaked into the room. He forcefully covered her mouth, threatening to kill her if she resisted. This left the poor girl trembling in fear, as she hadn't yet experienced anything with Baki. However, he quickly changed, and despite her unwillingness, he still took her life. Fortunately, Baki rushed in just in time to prevent that terrible act from occurring. He landed a punch that sent Sakura flying, as touching his girlfriend was a definite offense. Baki grabbed him and tossed him out to settle things. But when Baki stepped outside, Sakura has disappeared and Baki's girlfriend also went missing. The city's police chief paid a visit to Oliva, seeking his help in capturing the dangerous criminals who were wreaking havoc. However, Oliva caught the scent of his close friend. He bid farewell to the police chief, and promising to apprehend the criminals for him. Meanwhile, Baki's girlfriend had been kidnapped by Sakura, and taken to a high-rise hotel. Yet, this wasn't Sakura's idea. It was prompted by Baki's monstrous father, which drives him crazy. Sitting with a superhuman strength individual, Sakura got excited and launched a kick at Yujiro. However, the attack was blocked, and he was criticized for being inexperienced. Oliva arrived and decided to toy with Sakura a bit. Just as Oliva was about to tease Sakura, Baki entered the scene. Seeing his beloved in distress, his fury ignited. He lunged at Sakura with intense strikes, as if aiming to end the fight right then and there. A final punch sent Sakura flying out of the building. Old man Oliva spouted nonsense that made Baki turn and strike. With his youthful strength, he feared no one. When his blows seemed ineffective, Sakura's audacious spirit rose, and round 2 commenced. They engaged in an uncompromising battle, until the police arrived, prompting Sakura to flee. However, Baki wasn't about to let Sakura off easily. When he dared to kidnap Baki's girlfriend, and whether or not he assaulted her was unknown, Baki sought out Sakura, demanding a continuation in round 3. Before Sakura could even put his pants on, Baki unleashed a furious onslaught. Indeed, martial artists possess extraordinary power. When there is a girl next to him, the rapid barrage of punches left Sakura dazed, and a final low blow brought him to his knees. Old man Oliva intervened again, enraging Baki to the point of attacking him. But upon hearing Oliva's words about hunting down Sakura, Sakura woke up and attacked Oliva instead, and unaware he was facing the world's second strongest fighter. Sakura's assaults were meaningless against him. Oliva simply flexed his muscular arm, delivering a devastating punch that made Sakura yearn for reincarnation. He had successfully dispatched the first dangerous criminal for the police chief. Later, at the police station, they hunted for information about the second criminal. A female police officer brought coffee to Oliva. But the taste was oddly different. It turned out Doyle had impersonated the officer to get close. He launched an attack on Oliva, inflicting wounds upon him. However, Oliva was pleased that his opponent had sought confrontation, and wasn't aware that the injuries had been poisoned. Doyle then struck Oliva with a powerful blow. Although that attack was a bit painful, it caused Oliva to wake up. Seeing this, Doyle lunged for another punch, knocking Oliva unconscious, but Oliva couldn't be defeated so easily. He grabbed Doyle's leg and slammed him onto the floor. The small opponent could only cry out in agony when faced with such a formidable adversary. As Oliva gripped Doyle, he got wounded by a blade hidden in opponent collar. Doyle then proceeded to stab the knife into Oliva and delivered a barrage of 100 kicks. However, with Oliva's immense strength, those attacks didn't leave much of an impact. When the police chief and old man Shibu arrived, they found a scene of chaos, and Doyle had already escaped through a gas vent. At Shinkai Martial Arts Dojo, members witnessed Shinoji's performance firsthand. His mastery of soft techniques that could sever objects with just a flick of his fingers. He had come here with the purpose of defeating the criminal Doyle. Meanwhile, Doyle was inspecting his arsenal of weapons, making even Captain Stridham feel apprehensive. Doyle possessed weapons designed to inflict harm upon opponents. Not only that, he showcased his impressive punching strength for Stridham to see. Unexpectedly, Shinogi confronted Doyle, challenging him to a fight. As he finished his sentence, Shinogi swiftly delivered a punch straight into Doyle's throat. The force of the blow left Doyle struggling for breath, as the attack was overwhelmingly powerful. Despite Doyle's attempts to use his concealed weapons, he couldn't escape Shinogi's punch, and continues to be his esoteric skill that makes opponents cry. However, Doyle wasn't willing to give up easily. He pretended to initiate a handshake while activating his steel fist technique, causing Shinogi to clench his teeth in pain. And this time, Doyle unleashed his full arsenal of hidden weapons, instilling fear in opponent. Shinogi lunged forward to strike, but Doyle triggered a hidden mine, sending him flying. Even Captain Stridham shook his head at this dirty play. He hadn't anticipated Doyle would stoop to such tactics in his pursuit of victory. Meanwhile, Baki was making progress with his girlfriend. On a calm moonlit evening, she entered room and embraced him. This made Baki feel overwhelmed, as he was still inexperienced. Add to the intensity his girlfriend seems ready for tonight. But just as things were heating up, Baki's old man arrived, interrupting the moment of suspense. Not only did disrupt the atmosphere, Yujiro also encouraged Baki to make the most of his girlfriend. From morning to night, whenever desire struck, it was clear that the old man was clueless about propriety. His straightforward talk made the girlfriend uncomfortable. Seeing this, Baki reluctantly decided to postpone their rendezvous. He wanted to learn a few more incredible skills to ensure her ultimate satisfaction next time. Retsu and Doyle had a meeting at a bar. They engaged in a conversation about martial arts, but Retsu expressed his disapproval of Doyle's tendency to use underhanded tactics. This led to an impromptu fight right there in the bar. Retsu utilized his skills to demonstrate prowess, causing Doyle to panic in the face of this formidable opponent. Retsu unleashed his full range of knife techniques, launching a continuous barrage of knives at Doyle. But he couldn't dodge any of the knives, fleeing seemed to be his only option, yet escaping Retsu's pursuit proved impossible. Although Doyle tried to play dirty, it seemed his chances were slim. Retsu drew his sword and demonstrated his skillful sword dance, driving Doyle to cry out. Retsu managed to land 2 strikes before Doyle managed to escape. Realizing he couldn't evade Retsu's skill, Doyle set a trap using a smoke bomb to distract opponent. Retsu unleashed his anger, bombarding Doyle with a barrage of punches. This left Doyle feeling the bitter taste of defeat. It didn't stop there, when Retsu pulled out his staff, stripping his opponent of all knives. But Doyle wasn't grateful, so Retsu taught him a few hundred more lessons, holding him accountable for his dirty tricks, followed by a finishing blow to his opponent. Jack administered a sedative injection to him, then instructed Doyle to retreat for recovery. His current opponent is none other than Jack himself. Jack is Baki's half-brother. To attain the absolute strength he possesses now, he pumped himself with various enhancers. He shares the same goal as Baki, which is to become the strongest. Doyle saw this and turned away, but the thieves came to pickpocket Retsu. Then he had to teach them a lesson. Next, even the dog wouldn't be spared, so Doyle decided to stay overnight to keep an eye on him. When morning came, Retsu was surprised that Doyle had stayed up all night watching over him. He quickly took him to the Shinkai dojo for treatment, overcoming various obstacles to get there as soon as possible. Eventually, Doyle's life was saved. Following that, a sumptuous meal was prepared to aid his physical recovery. The next day, Doyle returned to the dojo with the intention of expressing gratitude to those who had assisted, and reciprocating their kindness. He put on protective attire, then spread explosive chemicals around and ignited a flame, causing the dojo to explode, when good intentions went bad. But luck wasn't on his side when he faced Doppo, the one who dared to sabotage the Shinkai dojo. Doyle underwent a test of patience, as Doppo hurled a series of insults that ignited his anger, leading to an intense fiery confrontation. Unexpectedly, Doppo retaliated with a counterattack, and challenged Doyle to follow him to an empty field for a fight. Here, Doppo allowed him to use his secret weapon, while continuing to belittle him, pushing Doyle's anger to its peak. Doyle charged forward, only to encounter Doppo's karate strikes, hundreds of punches that left him unconscious. Upon awakening, Doyle found himself in the Shinkai dojo, facing Katsumi. Despite Katsumi suffering second-degree burns from the previous explosion, his combat prowess remained formidable. He swiftly delivered a kick that rendered Doyle unconscious once again, and the cycle of defeat repeated. In the final battle, Doyle ultimately received a mercy meal. After finishing his meal, the third round commenced. Doyle couldn't keep up the pace, so Katsumi delivered a decisive punch to end it. However, he then called the doctor to treat Doyle and left. The next day, Doyle sought out Katsumi to express his gratitude and accept his defeat. Meanwhile, Baki's girlfriend was eagerly awaiting their intimate encounter, so she arranged a meeting for that day. Upon reading her letter, Baki rushed to find her. The moment was ripe as they were both in the mating season. Unable to wait any longer, they passionately engaged in the act, their souls aflame. It was Baki's first experience with losing his virginity, and they engaged in a passionate encounter 77 times in days, pushing each other to the limits without eating or drinking. Baki had intended to take his girlfriend out for breakfast to recharge his energy. However, the old man Yanagi sought him out to challenge. Unfortunately for Yanagi, Baki had just successfully mastered a new skill. They both ended up going to the back of the building for a rematch. Baki initiated the first attack. His strikes were dangerously forceful, compelling Yanagi to be on guard. This was the newfound vigor of a young man who had recently lost his virginity. Yet, Yanagi's techniques were not to be underestimated. He managed to land a penetrating blow on Baki, capitalizing on the opportunity to strike a few more times. Nonetheless, Baki was familiar with this move and replicated it, delivering a bone-penetrating blow to Yanagi. As they exchanged blows, using this skill against each other, Yanagi couldn't withstand the assault and fell to the ground. Just as the match seemed about to conclude, Sikorsky rushed in to rescue the old man. Because Baki had become quite strong by this point, he decided to take on both of them. When both hesitated and declined to attack, Baki pushed Sikors towards Yanagi, and then tightly gripped them both, delivering 2 slaps to their faces. Yanagi couldn't understand why Baki was unaffected by his poison attacks, and Baki swiftly kicked them both to end the confrontation. Yama continued to observe the battle, realizing that Baki had recently lost his virginity, which significantly boosted his strength. Baki had matured beyond his former self. Later, he took his girlfriend home, and their passionately driven journey continued. Yama decided not to engage in combat with them, leaving Yanagi feeling deeply humiliated. At this point, Katsumi took Doyle to the port to leave the area. Doyle wanted to utilize the short time to learn karate, and Katsumi agreed to teach him as per his request, deepening their relationship further. Afterward, Katsumi had to return, while Doyle stood waiting for the ship to arrive. Old man Yanagi felt a sense of disgust, observing the two opponents seemingly forming a bond like companions. Believing that Doyle was no longer of use, Yanagi decided to eliminate him and punched Doyle in one eye, leaving him blinded. In a state of panic, Doyle unleashed all his weapons, but Yanagi used a cloth to strangle him. He then delivered a lethal blow that caused Doyle to fall onto the ship. As Doyle was struggling to climb aboard the ship, Yanagi pronounced a death sentence using his ancestral sword. However, Doyle's iron arm shattered the sword. Realizing he was in a precarious situation, he released his grip, causing Doyle to plummet straight into the sea. Regarding Sakura, he had a confrontation with Jack. The two of them engaged in a battle within a restroom, where Jack initiated the attack. However, Sakura utilized his advantage to counter Jack's moves. Due to the significant difference in strength and height, he eventually got overpowered by Jack and cried out in pain. They entered into a mental struggle within a public phone booth. Despite the extremely cramped space, they managed to deliver attacks against each other. Sakura used his small body to unleash rapid punches, causing Jack to take the hits, but don't make Jack mad, as he utilized his powerful punch to strike Sikorsky, sending the crate they were in flying into the air, flipping it after each hit. When Jack emerged from the crate, the conflict had concluded peacefully. Mr. Igari came to transport Sakura back to the arena. There, he would be allowed to fight like a true martial artist, with thousands of eager fans awaiting their match. Jack took off his clothes to continue the second round with Sakura. He charged in to attack Jack, a series of strikes that left the opponent stumbling despite his utmost efforts. However, with Jack's immense strength, he easily knocked the opponent away. Sakura resorted to dirty tactics, but before he could execute them, he was sent flying up into the stands. Seeing that, he grabbed an old man's cane to fight against Jack, but it couldn't match opponent's robust physique. Therefore, he resorted to using a nail against Jack, but it was truly surprising when Jack caught it, and showcasing unexpected strength. Jack found this opponent weak, so he decided to switch teammates, leaving the audience infuriated, as they didn't know whether this new guy could match Jack's strength. Gaia displayed her ferocity, causing light bulbs to shake and the entire crowd to fall into silence with incredible power. And he displayed a few toys brought along to show Sakura, but Gaia wouldn't engage in combat like that. Instead, Gaia would leverage his specialized skills to confront him, and would utilize the power of the stones mixed within the sand to bring down the opponent. When launched at Sakura, he could only scream in agony due to this immense strength. He endured a series of blows without being able to retaliate. Following this, Gaia scattered sand into the air, creating a haze of flying dust. His body completely immersed and vanished within the sand. Sakura was in a state of panic, not knowing the whereabouts of his adversary. Gaia had camouflaged themselves within the stream of sand and executed attack, leaving Sakura disoriented. Gaia, a master at sowing fear, instilled deep psychological blows in their opponent. As they prepared for the subsequent strikes, Sakura was overwhelmed by profound psychological torment, facing an opponent that evoked sheer terror. Eventually, he succumbed to the pressure and begged for his life. On this side, the old man Yanagi was challenged by the fighter Motobi. Despite not knowing much about him, Yanagi doesn't back down from anyone. Motobi swiftly charged at his opponent, thrusting his sword into Yanagi's leg, and then using his chain to sweep his leg. Before Yanagi could react, the chain hit him in the face, forcing him to take out his sickle chain to counter. Just as Yanagi started to demonstrate, Motobi left, leaving Yanagi feeling disheartened. Motobi then grabbed him and threw him into the metal frame. Yanagi planned to use his poisonous hand technique against his opponent, but Motobi jumped up, and delivered a slash that knocked out his hand in an instant. Motobi demanded Yanagi to surrender, and Yuhiro was present to witness the battle, but Motobi daringly approached Yuhiro with his sword, Yuhiro performing a sword-breaking move that left the old man astounded. Yuhiro urged Yanagi to admit defeat, but his stubborn nature infuriated Yuhiro, resulting in a punch that felt like a falling meteor on his face. Meanwhile, Doyle managed to survive and hide in a cave. However, now he can't see anything at all. Oliva eventually tracked him down. Despite his condition, Doyle remained resilient and dared to fight Oliva. When Oliva examined opponent eye, he realized it had been poisoned, so he gave Doyle a knee strike. The confrontation of the 5 convicts has come to an end, with all 5 of them meeting a profoundly bitter outcome at the hands of the top Japanese martial artists. Today's video ends here. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to support Onichan in the upcoming videos. Thank you for tuning in. Much love.